Hello, I'm Frederick Price, and you're watching UAPB-TV. She's a Republican strategist, a political commentator, and she's on ABC's The View. But one could wonder, how does she have time to do anything in her personal life? Ana Navarro, thank you so much for being with me today. Let's start with you as a Republican strategist and a commentator. How'd you get your start doing that?
Look, I started as a Republican. I think a lot of, we are who we are plus our experiences. I fled communism. I ended up in Miami, where there were many Republicans who represented, that was also back in the 80s, right? This is a completely different Republican Party than what we see today. At that point, there were a lot of Republicans who represented my interests, who represented the things that were my priorities and important to me. As a commentator, I began as most kids do, volunteering in campaigns, licking envelopes, making phone calls, knocking on doors, which is hard to do in Miami because it's hot as hell in August. Very humid, bad for the hair. But, started moving up and started being a surrogate first in local radio, local media, local TV. And then when John McCain started running, Jeb Bush ran first, and I was on his campaign, so that made it more national and also more statewide. And then John McCain started running, and he and I were fast friends, and I became his media surrogate. So after he lost, they continued calling. Like CNN continued calling, and the different networks continued calling. And one day it dawned on me, this is really taking up my time. Somebody better pay me to talk, right? And I asked for money, and to my shock and awe, they gave it to me. And that taught me a lesson. You've got to know your own worth. You've got to know your own value. You've got to ask for what you're worth, because people will continue asking you to do things for free as long as you do things for free. And so that's how I got my start.
Well, there was a notion decades ago that men were a lot more superior than women. That's obviously not the case now. But when you talk about, knowing where to start and things like that, in terms of women, do you think women should shy away from asking for money or even trying to cover controversial topics?
No. And for me, I went to an all-girls school. And so I didn't know women were supposed to have this role or that role, because I was taught by very assertive, affirmative nuns, and they taught me to be who I am, to talk up, to speak up, to act up, to have social awareness that compels to action. And really, the gender thing wasn't even a factor, because it was like a Nike swoosh.
Yeah.
Just do it.
So
you're not a sports guy.
Yeah, I said I'm not a sports guy.
Nike is well,
I know what Nike is. I like Nike. I have a couple of Nike items. A couple, I said. But what message can you convey to women who are desperately trying to change things when they feel as though no one's listening to them?
Look, I think that can happen to women or men. And I think people can make a difference. If you want to see evidence of that, think about the Me Too movement, for example, and just how much that campaign and that hashtag and women coming up and supporting each other and strengthening each other in numbers and sharing their stories has changed. But for the Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein wouldn't be in jail right now. But for the Me Too movement, a lot of the people who have lost jobs and paid consequences, who had gotten away with sexual harassment and assault for decades, wouldn't be paying the piper now. And so I think, don't lose hope. Social media is a petri dish, but it is also it provides a platform and a way to make things go viral and aggregate so quickly. I think about the Million Women March, right? I think about the Women's March in Washington the day after the swearing in. That started with a housewife in Hawaii.
Really?
On Facebook, saying, the day after the swearing in, I'm going to Washington and marching. And when she woke up, there were 10,000 women saying, I'm going with you, girl. And let me tell you, when you're in Hawaii, I don't even know how you're thinking of marching, because it's, you know, beaches.
Paradise.
Frothy drinks with umbrellas and things. So, but she did it. And so the first thing you've got to beat is that notion that you don't make a change and that nothing matters.
And if it weren't for those courageous women who have come forward to make to make changes, I don't think we would have the changes that we see today. Do you think it's impossible or possible for political parties to come together to try to solve American issues? And how can they do that?
You know, this is not a good moment, obviously, and it's gotten worse and worse. And I think there are people, there are leaders who use the bully pulpit, and I'll name names. I think Donald Trump divides to conquer. I think he thinks that if he pits groups of people according to race or ethnicity or where their parents were born or where they were born against each other, then that brings out a level of support for him. And I think he thinks it works because he won in 2016. And we are in a hyper-partisan moment. I do think there are things that bring us all together. Look, the coronavirus this week. We very quickly got a bipartisan deal that's going through Congress because it is a crisis that affects all Americans. The coronavirus doesn't care if you're black, if I'm Hispanic, if you're a male, if I'm a woman, if you're a Democrat, if I'm Republican. It doesn't care. It doesn't ask. And so I think those type of issues and crises and emergencies do bring Americans together. But on a normal day, on a normal issue, the hyper-partisanship right now seems to get bigger, not smaller.
Very quickly, why do you think it's important to highlight the contributions that women have done in respect of Women's History Month?
Because many take it for granted. Because we as women have got to remember that it wasn't 100 years ago when we didn't have the right to vote. And so we've got now a duty and a responsibility to exercise the right that so many fought for us to have. Because for so long, women's contributions were ignored or misrepresented or erased. And so you're damn right we should be highlighting them and talking about them. And you know, look, any group that's been discriminated or that has been marginalized deserves for their truth and their contributions to be celebrated and known.
We're out of time. Thanks so much for joining me today. It was so great to see you.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your 1-year anniversary.
I know. You know, the only things we fight about are the way he spends internet money. I mean, he's
I hope not
so
excessively.
much. Oh, he shops. He's got a shopping problem. My driving and my celebrity crush on Mark Anthony. Oh, that's so bad.
Oh my goodness. Well, of course, you can catch Ana Navarro, I said it right, on CNN and ABC's The View. You're watching UAPB-TV.